Hi everyone, Shafiq here. Now that you know why working through your business assumptions in a systematic fashion is the optimal path that helps you and your team avoid rework, we're going to pivot to answering questions submitted by founders. Stephen, are you ready with our first question?
Yes, I am, Shafiq. Thanks very much. All right, let me check here. Okay. It looks like our first question comes from a new entrepreneur who's been working on their startup for about 6 months now. And it appears, according to my notes here, this person's been hearing from their advisors that they may need to pivot, especially, and it seems to be especially related to some struggles that they're experiencing related to social distancing during the pandemic. So, our founder's question is, what is a pivot, and why should any startup pivot away from the original idea?
Oh, that's a great question, Stephen. So pivots are nothing more than an attempt to fix a fatal flaw you identified as you work through the 5 key business assumptions about your idea. So in practice, sometimes pivot work, other times they don't. Generally, startups pivot because the market is telling them that one or more of their business assumptions is simply not true. So a famous example of pivots are when PayPal pivoted away from private payments conducted through a handheld Palm Pilot to web-based private payments. Their solution just did not fit as the Palm Pilot was not being used by many prospects in their developing online auction places like eBay. The rise of eBay created a large volume of eager users looking to conduct private transactions. Note at the time, PayPal had validated the problem, the channel, price, but they simply could not get enough transaction on the product assumption as it conceived it, which is an important lesson for founders. Never bet the farm on a specific solution. Keep your thinking flexible and look to serve the customers where they are. As a founder, you don't want to be in the preaching business. Instead, you want to find the converted and give them what will help them solve their problem. In PayPal's case, they didn't need to evangelize the need for quick and easy payments through a mobile device. Instead, they needed to recognize the growing demand for managing risk between two private parties and provide a solution that helped them solve their problem.
That's a great analogy, Shafiq, especially in the evangelization part. I think we run across a lot of founders who feel like they need to preach to their customers, and their customers will convert. One thing that came to mind when you're talking, if I can add in, you're right. There have been a number of famous pivots that really were the startups recognizing that their customers valued a key feature that solved a problem, a real problem that the original startup idea missed. An example that kind of comes to my mind is how Instagram grew out of the check-in app Bourbon. So as I understand it, the original app of Bourbon was similar to other check-in apps that were popular at the time, like Foursquare, except in Bourbon's case, it used pictures of the person's check-in to validate that the person was actually there. So that was kind of a novel way to make sure people weren't faking the check-in. It just so happened because the Bourbon founders wanted to make the pictures taken look interesting, they added photo filters, which merged functionality from other photo apps that just did photo filters. But Bourbon put a social element to them as allowed them to share. So it seems like what happened is quickly the Bourbon founders recognized that their users actually didn't need another check-in app, but instead loved sharing their edited photos. Hence, Instagram was born, and 9 months after they launched and really hit ran through market validation and everything else, they were purchased by Facebook for $1 billion, which often gives founders the wrong story, which is if you launch an app, within 9 months you're going to get bought by Facebook for $1 billion, but they totally miss all of the years of suffering and struggles that the Instagram founders actually went through. So it seems like, just as you described, Shafiq, pivoting for the sake of pivoting is worthless, and founders need to be pivoting with a purpose. So especially when a more compelling problem, when they identify a more compelling problem that is more reachable by them, and that's all possible. So, okay, our next question comes from someone who's thinking about pursuing their business dream by starting a business, and she wants to know, what is an MVP? And this doesn't have anything, as far as I understand, related to sports. So I'll let you jump in, Shafiq.
Wow. You know, the term MVP stands for minimum viable product. Unfortunately, it's one of the most misused terms out there. And a lot of it has to do with, Stephen, what you went over in your workshop. I think in your workshop you covered how a product really is a whole lot more than simply the final little thing that people pull out of a box. It's everything that leads to them pulling that product out. So they had to become aware of it. They had to be able to make up their mind, make a decision to purchase it, and then they could experience the product and adopt it to actually help us solve their problem. So when we think of the MVP, we really need to think of three different parts to an MVP. An MVP should help you generate qualified leads. In other words, it helps you in lead generation. It should definitely convert those qualified leads. So the second part would be the one that converts the qualified leads into actual paying sales, so sales conversion. And then the third part would be the product, which is the whole product adoption journey that we'll cover in the next workshop. And that a lot of that has to do with making sure that the product is not just simply pulled out of the box and then thrown on a shelf or discarded, but actually gets used and adopted by the user, which means that they would tell others about it. That eventually lowers your marketing costs and so on. So the MVP is the minimum part you need during the market validation phase for each of those three components. And then in the repeated sales engine, repeated sales and delivery portion of the phase of the startup development, the MVPs change. They become much more self-serve. So the minimum viable product there has a different purpose. It's not just to simply generate a manual lead or a manual sale, but it's to try and automate those so the person can self-serve, can become aware because they saw an ad, and the ad engine is being run because you automated through Facebook or click ads, whatever the right channel that you developed was. It could also be like, you could have a YouTube channel. There are all kinds of ways you can develop a channel. But the qualified lead it's an inbound lead, and then your sales engine takes over and they can self-serve and make a decision to purchase. And then finally, the last part is where you can consistently deliver that in the repeated sales and delivery. You can consistently produce a product and deliver it to them and take them through the buyer's journey so they adopt it. So minimum viable product changes depending on which phase of the business you're in. It's not like one consistent, long definition or one singular definition that stays the same. It depends. It depends if you're in market validation versus repeated sales or delivery. And of course, in scale, it changes even further. So a minimum viable product is always changing, and it depends on where you are in the startup development phase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for making that clear. Actually, I got to tell you, Shafik, MVP was one of the phrases I heard a lot when I first was going back through doing startups again over the last few years, and I really struggled and actually kind of hated that acronym for a while because it was so unclear, and I felt like we couldn't get a detailed understanding. I think you actually summarized it really well. And frankly, I think entrepreneurs have a tendency to make acronyms and lingo sound much more intimidating than that need be, which keeps potentially awesome founders on the sidelines, or for that matter, uncertain whether they should even ask a question like that. So I'm really glad this founder asked that question, because otherwise it almost feels like going to Starbucks for the first time and you're worrying about screwing up your order when you just want a coffee. All right. So let's see, last question here. And it looks like we're on a streak with another relatively new entrepreneur. And this question comes from someone who recently lost their job due to the downturn. We're sorry to hear that. Hopefully this is an inflection point of something positive that's going to happen for you. And this person wants to go forward in pursuing his startup idea. So Shafik, his question is, when should I raise money?
Okay, that's another good question. So clearly, the obvious answer would be as soon as you're ready, and of course before you run out, right? So you don't want to ever run out of money as a founder. That's always painful. But you also have to be scrappy. So when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you want to make sure you're ready. You have enough money to get started and to be able to make some progress. If you're trying to instantly turn up revenues, then startup may be not the right answer for you. Maybe getting a job is. But if you're able to invest some time and some resources to getting market validation, that can take up to 12 weeks and maybe a little bit longer. Depends on how complicated of a product you're trying to work and what the market's trying to serve, whether things fall your way or not. But the main thing is that as a founder, you have to be prepared to be able to raise money when you need to, which means you have to be ready. So how do you know you're ready? Well, you know you're ready when you've at least gotten market validation. And in some rare cases, that works. But here's the thing that we've learned. In our experience, angels and VCs look for signs. Are you a one-hit wonder, or can you consistently deliver results? So in our methodology, if you just gotten market validation, that's good. That means you should continue working and continue investing for yourself. But if you're going to ask somebody else to invest, the next thing you have to conquer is repeated sales. When you can repeatedly generate qualified leads and then convert those leads into sales, that's when you're ready. Because that's what enables you to get into that virtuous cycle that Stephen talked about in his earlier workshops, where you can quickly improve the product. So as long as you're getting some early sales, you can deliver whatever version of the product you got, get feedback, and then get into the next iteration and next iteration, next iteration, so that you can quickly get to that, what we would call the mainstream market product. So what I would say is the surest way to get an investor to write you a check is to constantly announce you have one more new sale. And we can do that once a week or once a month, depending on if you're doing B2B or a consumer. And if you're doing consumer, you can say, hey, we just sold another 30, another 50. But if you're doing B2B, having that monthly close and letting them know what that added to the backlog is like a tremendous way of gaining their confidence. And that's when they're going to release a check. We've seen lots of people get affirmatives from both the angels and VCs, but what they never do is they never write the check till the next sale comes. And if the sale takes too long, then they just kind of wait till the next one to see if you're actually conquering sales or not. So if you want to get that check in your hand by the time you need it, not when it's too late, then you're going to make sure you're conquering sales fast. You can quickly take them through the buyer's journey and get that signed contract. That's the surest way of delivering sales. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, everyone. Speak's laying down some awesome strategy for you here. And if you're not sending in questions, you're missing out. So if you're looking to build your startup lean, please click the link nearby or drop your question in the comments below. Also, please subscribe to our channel so you can receive immediate access to our latest episodes. Building Lean has been brought to you by the LeanMastery Incubator. LeanMastery helps founders convert their ideas into a thriving business fast and helps business owners avoid mistakes that cost time and money. Learn more about how you can become a LeanMastery Incubator member at leanmastery.co. Thank you everyone for watching, and we look forward to helping you be successful in pursuing your startup dreams by building lean.